The stars looked cold from the bridge of the eternal dawn. Admiral Park stood with his hands behind his back, watching Earth grow smaller through the viewport. The blue planet that had given birth to humanity was now just a marble floating in the darkness. Soon it would be nothing but a memory. Behind the eternal dawn, 10,000 ships moved in perfect silence. Colony ships, transport vessels, cargo haulers. Every ship humanity had ever built was now carrying people away from the only galaxy they had ever known. 12 billion humans were leaving their home forever. Lieutenant Commander walked up beside the Admiral. She was young, only 32 years old, but her eyes looked tired. Everyone's eyes looked tired these days. "The last transport just left Mars," she reported. "All colonies are empty now." Nodded slowly, he did not turn away from the viewport. "And Earth?" "The final evacuation ships departed 3 hours ago. Seoul was the last city to empty." Paused. Her voice became quiet. "My grandmother refused to leave her apartment. She said she wanted to die on Earth." "Did she?" "My mother carried her onto the ship. She's sleeping now in the medical bay." Tried to smile but failed. "She'll probably never forgive us." The Admiral finally turned to look at his officer. His face was lined with age and worry. He had served humanity for 40 years, fought in 3 wars, and commanded the largest fleet ever assembled. But nothing had prepared him for this. Nothing could prepare anyone for watching their entire species run away. "They wanted us gone," said. "The Council made that very clear." "The Council can rot," replied, her voice sharp with anger. Almost smiled. "Careful, Lieutenant Commander. That kind of talk is what got us exiled in the first place." The Galactic Council had ruled the Milky Way for 10,000 years. 21 species working together, sharing resources, maintaining peace. When humans first reached the stars 200 years ago, they had been welcomed. At first. But humans were different. They grew too fast. They invented too quickly. They asked too many questions and never accepted the answers they were given. They built colonies on worlds that other species had abandoned as useless. They found ways to live where life should have been impossible. The Council grew worried. Then the Council grew afraid. Remembered the day the vote happened. He had been standing in the gallery, watching the representatives of 21 species raise their appendages in agreement. Claws, tentacles, crystalline limbs, and chitinous arms all pointing upward. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer welcome. "Leave the galaxy," High Chancellor Al had announced, his insect voice clicking and buzzing. "Take your ships and your people and go. You have 5 years. If any human remains after that time, you will all be destroyed." Some humans wanted to fight. They said humanity should show the Council what happened when you threatened the wrong species. Admiral had wanted to fight too, deep in his heart. But the President had decided otherwise. President was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She had gathered the military leaders in her office and spoken only a few words. "We will leave," she had said, quietly, with dignity. "Let them think they have one." "But ma'am," had protested, "we could defeat them. Our technology is better than theirs, I know." President had smiled, and there was something strange in that smile, something knowing. "But some victories are more important than others. We will leave, and one day they will understand why." That had been 5 years ago. Now the exodus was complete. On the colony world of New, Governor watched the last families board their transport ships. Children cried and asked why they had to leave. Parents tried to explain but could not find the words. How do you tell a child that the galaxy does not want them? Walked through the empty streets of the capital city. She had built this place with her own hands. She had planted the first tree in the Central Park. She had watched the population grow from 10,000 settlers to 3 million citizens. Now the streets were silent. The shops were empty. The schools would never hear children's laughter again. Her assistant, a young man named, hurried up beside her. "Governor, the council observers are asking when we will be finished." Tell them we are leaving everything in perfect condition. Looked at the buildings around her. Not a single broken window, not one piece of garbage. Let them see exactly what they are taking from us. Frowned. Why? Why should we make it easy for them? Because that is who we are. Turned to face her assistant. We are humans. We build things. We leave things better than we found them. Even when we are being thrown away like trash, we will act with honor. The last ship lifted off from New as the sun set, stood at the viewport, watching the purple sky fade to black. She did not cry. She had no tears left. Across the galaxy, on every human world, the story was the same. Cities emptied. Farms went silent. Space stations powered down to minimal function. 12 billion people packed their lives into boxes and bags and walked onto ships that would carry them into the unknown. Admiral watched the edge of the galaxy approach. Beyond it lay only darkness, empty space between galaxies where no ship had ever traveled. Set course for the void, he ordered. Course laid in, Admiral, the navigator replied. Took one last look at the Milky Way. Somewhere behind him, the Council was probably celebrating. They had finally gotten rid of the human problem. They will call it victory, said quietly. Let them, replied, we know the truth. The human fleet crossed the edge of the galaxy and vanished into the darkness between stars. They did not look back. 5 years passed since the humans left. The Galactic Council celebrated their victory every year on the anniversary. Parades filled the streets of 100 worlds. Speeches praised the wisdom of the Council. Children learned in school that the dangerous humans had been driven away forever. High Chancellor Al stood before the Council Assembly with all 4 of his arms raised high. His insect body gleamed under the bright lights. His compound eyes looked out at the representatives of 20 species. One seat remained empty. The human seat. It would stay empty forever. We have cleansed the galaxy of the human contamination, Al announced. His voice clicked and buzzed with pride. Their worlds now belong to the collective. Their technology serves our purposes. The threat is ended. The assembly hall filled with sounds of approval. Tentacles slapped against desks. Crystalline bodies chimed together. Chitinous claws clicked in applause. But not everyone was celebrating. Admiral swam through the flooded corridors of the occupation headquarters on Earth. The humans had called this city Seoul. Now they had filled it with water so their people could live there. Buildings that once held millions of humans now housed a few thousand fish-like aliens. Report, she gurgled to her science officer. The human power systems continue to function, the officer replied. But we cannot understand how they work. Our engineers have studied them for years. The technology is beyond us. Fins twitched with annoyance. This was not what she wanted to hear. The humans were primitives. They had only been in space for 200 years. We have been among the stars for 8,000 years. How can we not understand their machines? I do not know, Admiral, but the facts remain. We can use their technology, but we cannot copy it. We cannot repair it when it breaks. We cannot improve it. On the colony world that used to be called New, a scientist named Prism of Dawn walked through the empty human streets. Her crystalline body caught the light of the alien sun and scattered rainbows across the abandoned buildings. She had come here to study the humans, to understand what had made them so different, so dangerous, so hated. What she found confused her. The city was beautiful. Every building was designed with care. Parks and gardens filled the spaces between structures. Public art decorated every corner. The humans had not simply built a place to live. They had built a place to love. Prism of Dawn entered what appeared to be a learning center. Young humans must have come here to study. The walls were covered with bright pictures and educational displays. Small chairs sat in circles around larger chairs where teachers must have sat. A message was written on one wall in the human language. Prism of Dawn had learned to read human words. This message said, "Be curious, Ask questions, never stop learning. She stood there for a long time, staring at those words. In the capital city of the problems were beginning to show. The former human colonies had produced most of the food for 3 sectors of the galaxy. Humans had found ways to grow crops on worlds that should have been barren. They had created farming techniques that produced 10 times more food than anyone else could manage. Now those farms were failing. Workers tried to maintain the human machines, but they did not understand them. Plants died, harvests failed, food shipments stopped arriving. "We are facing shortages," a minister reported to the chancellor. "The populations of 14 worlds are going hungry." Al waved a dismissive claw. "Adapt, find new solutions. The humans were not special. Anything they could do, we can do better." But that was not true, and deep inside the chancellor knew it. On the water world of Prime, a hospital struggled to save patients. They had taken human medical technology from Earth, machines that could heal almost any injury, devices that could cure diseases that had killed millions. But the machines required human-trained technicians to operate them. There were no human technicians anymore. The machines sat silent while patients died. Engineer Han had been one of the last humans to leave New. Before she boarded her transport ship, she had hidden something in the colony's main computer system. A message. She had placed the same message in every human database across every abandoned world. It took the scientist Prism of Dawn 3 years to find it. She was searching through old files when the words appeared on her screen. "We did not lose, we chose to leave. There is a difference, you will understand eventually." Prism of Dawn read the message again and again. What did it mean? The humans had been forced to leave. The council had threatened them with destruction. How could they say they chose to leave? She began to dig deeper into the human records. What she found changed everything she thought she knew. The humans had known. They had known for centuries that the council would eventually exile them. They had been preparing, quietly, secretly. While the council debated and voted and threatened, the humans had been building ships, mapping routes between galaxies, creating technology that would let them survive anywhere. The exile had not been a defeat, it had been an escape. Prism of Dawn tried to tell the council what she had discovered. She wrote reports. She requested meetings. She begged anyone who would listen to pay attention. No one listened. "The humans are gone," Al told her when she finally got an audience with him. "They are no longer our concern. Focus on the present, not the past." But Prism of Dawn could not stop thinking about that message, could not stop wondering what the humans had seen coming, what they were preparing for. And in the darkness between galaxies, far from any star, the human fleet continued to move. They built stations in the void. They raised children who had never seen Earth. They worked and planned and waited. Admiral, now old and gray, stood on the bridge of the eternal dawn and looked at the distant glow of the Milky Way. "How long?" asked. She was older now too. Her hair had turned white. "We wait as long as we need to," replied. "When the time comes, we will be ready." Neither of them knew exactly when that time would come, but they both knew it would. 20 years had passed since the humans disappeared into the void. The galaxy was falling apart. The food crisis had spread to 40 worlds. Billions of beings were hungry. The farms that humans had built continued to fail because no one could fix the machines that ran them. Ships carried emergency supplies from world to world, but there was never enough. The communication network was dying. Humans had built the system that let species talk to each other across vast distances. Faster-than-light messages traveled through relay stations that humans had designed. Now those stations were breaking down, one by one. Sometimes messages took days to arrive. Sometimes they never arrived at all. In the council chambers, the mood had changed. The celebrations were over. Now there was only fear and blame. "We must find the humans," Counselor declared. She had risen to become the voice of her people after the old admiral died. We need their knowledge. We need their skills. Without them, we will not survive. High Chancellor Al slammed his claws against his desk. Never, we will never beg those primitives for help. We drove them out. We cannot admit we were wrong. Pride will not feed our people, another counselor shouted. Pride will not fix our machines. The humans are gone, Al insisted. They fled into the void between galaxies. No one can survive there. They are probably all dead by now. But Prism of Dawn knew better. She had spent 20 years studying everything the humans left behind. Every book, every recording, every piece of data. She had learned their languages. She had studied their history. She had come to understand how they thought. And she had found their secret. In a hidden file, buried deep in a research station on the edge of what had been human space, she discovered the truth. The humans had not simply left the galaxy. They had been watching something, tracking something, preparing for something. The file contained charts and calculations, star maps and trajectory predictions, sensor readings from probes sent into the depths of space beyond the galactic rim. Something was coming. Prism of Dawn ran to the council with her discovery. Her crystalline body flickered with urgent light as she presented her findings. The humans knew, she announced. They detected something approaching our galaxy, something from the void, something massive and terrible. That is why they left. They were not running from us. They were preparing to face something worse. The council stared at her in silence. This is madness, Al finally said. There is nothing in the void, nothing lives between galaxies. The humans were simply cowards who fled rather than fight. Look at the data, Prism of Dawn pleaded. They calculated arrival times. They estimated the size of the approaching force. They tried to warn us, Chancellor. 30 years before the exile, they tried to tell us something was coming. I remember no such warning. Because we did not listen. Prism of Dawn's light flashed bright with frustration. Human scientists presented evidence to the Council Science Committee. The committee dismissed it as fantasy. The humans tried again and again. No one believed them. Counselor leaned forward. Her large eyes blinked slowly. What exactly did they say was coming? Prism of Dawn pulled up the human files on the central display. Images appeared. Blurry pictures taken by deep space probes, shapes moving in the darkness between galaxies, organic forms, living ships, millions of them, billions. The humans called them the Swarm, Prism of Dawn said, a force of living creatures that travels from galaxy to galaxy. They consume everything, planets, stars, life, everything. The council chamber fell completely silent. According to human calculations, Prism of Dawn continued, the swarm has already consumed 7 galaxies over the past 1,000,000 years. They detected it approaching our galaxy approximately 200 years ago. They estimated arrival time at, she paused and checked the date. Her light dimmed. 23 years from the exile. Counselor did the math quickly. That means. It means they should be here in 3 years, Prism of Dawn finished. Maybe less. Al rose from his seat. His compound eyes could not show emotion, but his voice trembled. This is impossible. This is human lies. They planted false information to frighten us. Why would they do that? They are gone. They gain nothing from frightening us now. I do not know why humans do anything, Al shouted. They were always strange, always unpredictable. This is just another human trick. But some in the council were not so sure. Over the following months, they launched their own probes into the void. What the probes found confirmed everything in the human files. The swarm was coming, and it was closer than anyone had thought. Panic spread across the galaxy. Governments collapsed. Populations fled from outer worlds toward the galactic core, hopping to hide. Military forces mobilized, but no one knew how to fight an enemy like this. The council sent messages into the void, broadcasting on every frequency. Humans, if you can hear us, please respond. We need your help. We were wrong. Please respond. There was no answer. In the stations humanity had built between galaxies, the message was received. Commander Bay listened to it in her office aboard the New Soul. She was the granddaughter of refugees who had fled Earth. She had never seen the world her species came from. She had been born in the darkness of the void. "They want our help," her communications officer reported. "They say they were wrong." Looked out the viewport at the vast fleet surrounding her station. 15,000 warships, the most advanced vessels ever built. Weapons and shields and engines that made Council technology look like stone tools. For 20 years humanity had been building, training, preparing. "We knew this day would come," said quietly. "Grandmother always said they would call for us eventually." "What do we do?" Turned away from the viewport. Her face was calm, her eyes were hard. "We go home." The swarm arrived on a quiet morning. They came from the darkness between galaxies like a wave of living death. Billions of organic ships, creatures the size of moons, things that had crossed the empty void between galaxies and survived, things that had destroyed 7 galaxies before this one. The first world to fall was a colony on the outer rim. The entire population of 8 million died in 6 hours. The swarm did not simply attack, it consumed. Buildings were eaten, ships were swallowed, people were absorbed into the living mass and became part of it. High Chancellor Al watched the destruction from a screen in the council chambers. His 4 arms hung limp at his sides. His compound eyes could not blink, but if they could, they would have been full of tears. "Send the fleet," he ordered. "All ships, stop them." The combined fleet of the Galactic Council was the largest military force ever assembled. 3 million ships from 20 species, the pride of galactic civilization. The swarm destroyed it in 2 days. "They adapt," Admiral reported before her ship was consumed. "Our weapons work once, then they change, they become immune, they learn too fast." World after world fell. The ocean planets, the crystalline cities of the trillions of beings died screaming as the swarm swept across the galaxy. Prism of Dawn fled with the last survivors of her species. Their beautiful crystal towers were gone. Their ancient libraries were consumed. Millions of years of history swallowed by the endless hunger of the swarm. She thought about the humans as her refugee ship jumped from system to system, always running, never finding safety. They had known. They had tried to warn everyone, and no one had listened. "We should have listened," she whispered to no one. In the void between galaxies, Commander Bay assembled her officers in the war room of the New Soul. Holographic displays showed the state of the galaxy. Red marks covered almost everything. The swarm was winning. "Status report," ordered. "Approximately 70% of Council-held territory has fallen," her tactical officer, Sergeant O, reported. "Casualties are estimated at 4 trillion. The swarm is advancing toward the galactic core. Time until total consumption. At current rate, approximately 3 years." Studied the map. She was only 42 years old, but she had trained her entire life for this moment. Every human had. Every child born in the void had grown up knowing that one day they would return to face this enemy. "How many ships do we have?" she asked. 15,412 combat vessels, plus 200 support ships. All crews are at full readiness. Some of her officers shifted uncomfortably. They all knew the numbers. The swarm had millions of creatures, billions maybe. 15,000 ships against a force that had consumed entire galaxies. "It is not enough," one officer muttered. "It does not have to be enough," replied. "It has to be human." She turned to face her officers. These were the children and of refugees, people who had never seen Earth, people who had built their civilization in the cold emptiness between stars. They had nothing except each other and the ships they had constructed with their own hands. "The council threw us away because they were afraid of what we might become," said. "They were right to be afraid, but they were afraid of the wrong thing. They thought we would conquer them. They did not understand that humans do not fight to conquer. We fight to protect, even those who hate us, even those who wronged us." She pulled up the fleet deployment orders on the main display. "We will enter the galaxy in 6 waves. The first wave will establish defensive positions around refugee populations. We do not attack the swarm directly. We defend. We evacuate. We buy time." "Buy time for what?" asked. Smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "The swarm adapts to weapons quickly, but we have been studying them for 2 centuries. We know their weakness." She brought up a new display. Scientific data, biological analysis, the accumulated research of 6 generations of human scientists who had devoted their lives to understanding the enemy. "The swarm is a hive mind, trillions of creatures sharing one consciousness. That is their strength. It is also their weakness." She pointed to a diagram. "There are command nodes, central points in the network that coordinate the smaller creatures. Destroy enough nodes and the swarm loses cohesion. The creatures become confused. They stop adapting. They become vulnerable." "How do we find these nodes?" "We built something special," pulled up one final image, a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Human engineers have spent 40 years designing this. We call it the Silence. It sends a specific frequency into the swarm network. The frequency disrupts their communication. For a few seconds, every creature in a sector becomes isolated, alone, and in those seconds we can strike." The officers stared at the weapon specifications. The technology was beyond anything the Council had ever possessed, beyond anything anyone had imagined possible. "The swarm has never faced anything like humanity," said. "They have never faced a species that refuses to give up, a species that fights harder when things look impossible, a species that would rather die than let innocent people suffer." She stood tall and looked at each of her officers in turn. "Today we go home. Today we save the galaxy that threw us away, not because they deserve it, but because that is who we are. That is what it means to be human." The fleet powered up their engines. 15,000 ships turned toward the distant glow of the Milky Way. "All ships," commanded, "jump to." The human fleet vanished into the darkness. They were going home at last. The human fleet emerged from darkness like stars being born. 15,000 ships appeared above the burning world of 7. Below them, the swarm covered the surface like a living ocean. Billions of creatures consuming everything they touched. Crystal cities that had stood for 1,000,000 years were being dissolved. The last survivors huddled in underground shelters, waiting to die. Commander Bay stood on the bridge of the New Soul. She looked at the horror below and felt no fear, only purpose. "All ships engage defensive formation," she ordered. "Protect the civilian shelters. Nothing touches those people." The human fleet spread out across the sky. Weapons that the Council had never seen began to fire. Energy beams that cut through swarm creatures like light through shadow. Missiles that disrupted the hive-mind connection between organisms. Shields that absorbed attacks that had destroyed Council battleships with single hits. The swarm tried to adapt. It always adapted. That was how it had consumed 7 galaxies. But the humans had studied the swarm for 200 years. Every time it changed, they were ready. Every adaptation was countered. Every new attack was blocked. On the surface, Prism of Dawn crawled out of her shelter to watch the battle above. Her crystalline body was cracked and dim. She had not expected to survive. None of her people had. Human descended through the smoke and fire. Soldiers in battle armor jumped out before the ships even landed. They formed defensive lines around the shelters. They carried survivors to evacuation transports. They fought and died protecting beings who had voted to exile humanity. Private No was 19 years old. She had been born on a station in the void. She had never seen a planet until today. Now she was running through the ruins of an alien city, helping creatures made of living crystal reach safety. A swarm creature appeared from the smoke, a massive thing with too many limbs and a mouth that never stopped opening, saw it coming toward a group of refugees, old ones, young ones, a family trying to reach the transport ship. Did not think, she threw herself between the creature and the refugees. Her weapon fired again and again. The creature screamed and fell. But another one came behind it, did not see it until it was too late. She died with her body shielding the family. She died with a smile on her face because she knew they would make it to the ship. Prism of Dawn saw it happen. She watched this young human give her life for people who were not her species, not her friends, not anything to her except living beings who needed help. Why? Prism of Dawn asked the medic who arrived too late to save. Corporal Shin looked at the crystalline being. His face was tired, his eyes were sad, but his voice was steady. Because that is who we are, he said. That is who we have always been. The battle for 7 lasted 3 days. The humans won. They loaded every survivor onto ships and took them to safety. Then they moved on to the next world. For 3 years the war continued. The human fleet was everywhere at once, defending, evacuating, fighting. They liberated worlds that had fallen. They rescued populations that had given up hope. They taught other species how to fight back. The silence weapons worked exactly as designed. Human ships would enter a sector, activate the frequency, and watch the swarm fall into chaos. Then the combined forces would strike, destroying command nodes and breaking the hive mind into smaller, weaker pieces. Slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. Commander led the final assault herself. The central swarm mass had retreated to the outer rim, trying to regroup. 10,000 human ships surrounded it. 3,000 ships from Council species joined them, former enemies fighting side by side. Activate all silence devices, ordered. Maximum range. The frequency spread across space. The swarm shuddered. Trillions of creatures suddenly found themselves alone in their own minds for the first time in their existence. They did not know how to function alone. They did not know how to think individually. All ships fire. The swarm died screaming. It took 6 hours to destroy them all. When it was over, the galaxy fell silent. Admiral Park was very old now. He had watched everything from his cabin on the eternal dawn. He had seen his people leave in shame and return in glory. He had seen the children of refugees become the saviors of civilizations that had hated them. When the war ended, the surviving Council species waited for humanity's revenge. They expected to be conquered, punished, made to suffer for what they had done. Instead, Admiral appeared on every screen in the galaxy. He stood with difficulty. Age had taken much from him, but his voice was still strong. You exiled us because you feared what we might become, he said. You were right to fear, but you were wrong about what we would become. We became your protectors. We do not want your apologies. We do not want your gratitude. We want you to remember this. Humanity protects, even those who hate us, even those who wronged us. That is not weakness. That is strength you never understood. The humans did not reclaim Earth. They did not take back their colonies. They helped rebuild what the swarm had destroyed. They shared their technology freely. They trained other species in medicine and farming and engineering. Then they returned to their stations in the void. But this time, they left embassies on every world. This time, they remained connected to the galaxy they had saved. Prism of Dawn lived another 200 years. She spent that time teaching young about humans, about what they had done, about why they had done it. They did not forgive us because we deserved forgiveness, she would tell her students. They forgave us because that is who they are. They protected us because they could not watch innocent beings suffer, even beings who had wronged them.